Hey everybody, Breakthrough Health and Life Coach Glenn Hattem here. I'm here with my good friend Keegan Lamar.
I appreciate it, my man.
And Keegan is a great friend, a former client, and also been a mentor of mine as well too. And he and I have been on a unique journey as coaches in an industry clouded with all kinds of wild options and directions to go. And we're just here to maybe bring some clarity for everyone when you're, everybody needs a coach. And when it comes to finding a coach, it's finding someone that you can trust to do the work. I think that's about as simple as I can put it.
Yeah.
And Keegan has been an industry leader for some time now, making a difference, making an impact in the world of I would say high level executives, your folks that are former athletes that are trying to take it to the next level. But he definitely has a clear focus of the folks that he is able to impact at the highest level, and he'll be sharing a little bit about that later. But right now, I'd like to have Keegan share a little bit about what got you on this path of coaching, and maybe starting back in time. I think I'm always curious about, who were you when you were a little kid? Like, were you like the straight A student, or were you the rebel, or were you the, what kind of, how did you see yourself when, conforming to authority when you were a little kid?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really interesting question because I've always been somebody who, growing up, so I was a middle child. And so growing up, my brother, was, the dirt and mud, rough around, rough house type of kid. Went and, dove into playing football, did everything he could, went hunting with my dad. And then there was me. I was almost the exact opposite. And I have a younger sister. And so being that middle child, I was a very observative kid. And this is not just me saying, this is actually me listening to what other people described me as when I was a kid. They would tell me all the time, you were very observant. You just watched. And the thing is, I have children of my own now, and my second born, who is turning 1 here soon. She is very, very observant. And so I'm kind of getting validated that was, as a matter of fact, the case for a lot of, my childhood. Being very observant, being very creative, being very thoughtful, very detail oriented. I always kind of questioned why certain things were, not necessarily had a problem with authority or anything like that, but I always wanted to rationalize why something was the way it was and try to just get a deep understanding of things. And school came really easy to me until I hit probably middle of high school. And that was when actually sports started to get really serious for me. And because I went to college and I played football at the University of Colorado, but I was the kid who did not want to play football. Like that was the last thing on my mind. I love playing basketball, but I didn't necessarily have the height, right? I wasn't going to be taller than about 6'1", which is where I'm at. And 6'1" is borderline like hyper short. You're like barely taller than like Nate Robinson in the NBA if you're 6'1", right? I mean, just the sheer difference in size. So basketball,
I remember you back then.
Yeah. So in basketball just wasn't going to be the long-term thing. And obviously my parents were big into football. My dad played football professionally. And so they pushed me to do that. And they said, you have to play it for 1 season. And obviously after that, if you hate it, you don't have to do it again, but you have to at least try it. And I did it. And just because of my general size, I was just a big stature person comparatively to a lot of the other kids. I got a lot of attention and it felt great. And obviously there's a lot of camaraderie and all this other stuff. So I obviously stuck with it. But I was never the type of person who was aggressive, right? Like you have to be violent if you're going to play a game like football. I'm a very thoughtful individual. I'm a very, like I mean, I like to put it as I give a crap about other people and myself. I care about the way that I communicate with others. Like I don't often, like I have a really, really great grasp on that monster within that, some people just have no control over.
Right.
And so that was kind of the big thing when I was a kid. I was super observant, and I didn't have, I was very coachable. I would listen if someone could talk to me as a normal human being. I was very receptive. And Glenn, this, like you would say, hey, you're going to do this. And when we would do some work together when I was younger and I was in high school, you'd say, hey, we're going to, do 1,000 jumps. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. Like there wasn't necessarily a question of it. If I understood what it was and why it helped, like I didn't ask questions. I just did it. And
You
just
ask questions just for, how do I do this? How are you wanting me to do this? Or what's the best way to go about this? You're asking the right questions, not necessarily just confronting and just trying to disturb the peace of, like, you were just like, let's just figure out how to work together.
Yeah. There was never any, are you kidding me? It was, hey, you're going to jump. And I'd say, okay, how many times?
Correct. I remember that of you. Yeah, absolutely. And still to this day. So.
Yeah. And that played a lot into, obviously, where I'm at now with coaching. I never realized it at the time, but it was building some of those softer skills of curiosity, of intuitiveness, of reading people, of understanding, what's being asked, why things are being asked, and how puzzle pieces fit together. There was just this genuine ability to be in search of information. And obviously now I can look back and feel great about it and be like, I'm glad that was the way it was, but it was not a hard, or it wasn't an easy road, right? Like, my parents went through a divorce, and when I was in high school, and my dad was one of my high school football coaches, and I lived with my mom. And so I was very much, like a middle child being in the mix of everything. I was in the middle of that. And during that time, my brother was off at college and my sister was, still pretty young. So I was thrown into the mix, pretty
What's the
early.
impact of that going through a divorce? You got parents that ran a very successful company,
Yep.
In the fitness industry. And your brother, your dad is, both incredible athletes and people that you look up to, and at the same time, and your mom, is just an incredible, powerful, and just deep heart, just deep. And here you are thrown in the mix of like divorce and like those really critical years. Now, most people would go a very different dark direction if given the opportunity to just not be coachable, self-neglect, self-abandon. What was the messaging what you were receiving? Obviously there's nurturing from both your parents in different ways.
Yeah. So it was filled with a lot of what I would consider to be tougher moments, darker moments. Some of them were really based off of the fact that, and I told my dad this one time, and it's something that, I'll never forget when I sat with him and I told him, I said, I see you more as a coach than as my father. And so there was a lot of self-preservation that occurred when I was going through high school, mainly because, number one, you have no clue what to do with all the information. You're waking up every other day and something's different with your body, for God's sake. But to go through, and I know divorce nowadays is super common, but to me, like, it wasn't. Like it was something where, your entire world, everything, something was happening that doesn't happen. And I know there's plenty of people who are like, oh, it happens all the time. Well, when that's not what you're conditioned to believe, I grew up religious, and obviously in there, like, it's, till death do you part. And so for me, a lot of stuff was thrown into the mix of, this is not normal. How do you handle this? And I had to, like I said, go into self-preservation mode and figure out how I protect myself. So I had to kind of create roles. I decided, my mom was going to be emotional support and other stuff like that. And my dad was going to be my coach. for football, and I looked to him to kind of um, push me and get advice about football and other stuff like that. But I never sat with him and really wanted to have a father-son relationship the way that I do now. I mean, after everything, he and I have, obviously, we now have a great relationship, but during that time, it wasn't great. I mean, we didn't casually call each other. It was either something for football or we didn't talk.
Well,
And
Keegan,
I
so
grew up.
can you just more
Yeah.
emphasis on the self-preservation aspect of what, just kind of
Yeah. What I actually did.
what were you receiving and how did you take that information? And sometimes we think of like self-preservation as like a bad thing,
Yeah.
but there's like a lot of like powerful stuff that you got during a very painful, dark time.
Yeah. So great question. So when it comes to performance, which is a big thing that I focus on,
Yep.
and I look back and I, dissect some of the stuff that I did, I figured out the path of least resistance to get the most performance out of myself possible. And when I think about performance, it was how do I perform well in school and how do I perform well for sports? And in order to do that, I had to eliminate as many distractions as I could. During that time, I was in a relationship that, I mean, I was in for 7 years and I should not have been, but it was something that eliminated the distraction of companionship. Whether that was healthy or not was not the question. It was the longing for companionship was a distraction. And so it was removed during that time. And the other distractions were obviously, trying to have mend a relationship with my dad. And going into that was a distraction to my ability to be coachable and go far with my football career. So I focused on how do I eliminate that? How do I not engage with that so that I can focus purely on being an athlete? And then for my mom, it was, support her. She was in a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, and kind of share some emotional support with each other. But I mean, there was always, and a lot of people usually get their emotional support from, the female energy within their life. And so I was like, that's all I'm going to do. And I didn't get anything else. I didn't receive, I didn't really take too well to advice or anything else from her. It was either, you support and love me in a way that suits me best, or I don't want it. I don't know what to do with it. And so I tried to cut that out. And so I received a lot of information. The biggest thing I did was figure out what was a distraction to me at the time and what was going to be the path of least resistance, because I prioritized what was the most important thing for me to do. Get good enough grades to be able to go to whatever college that I wanted to. And then play well enough that those colleges that I really wanted to go to had a vested interest in hearing me out or sharing in the story or, giving me a shot. And all during a time where you're waking up and you have, on any given day, you have no clue how your emotional well-being is probably going to be kept in balance, because you're going through this, puberty stage where so much stuff is changing for you on such a rapid basis that you're almost flying by the seat of your pants. And everything that I just mentioned, I was doing all subconsciously. And it allowed me to have some sense of happiness right throughout all of it. And I don't say some sense of happiness like everything was doom and gloom. From a practical perspective, I'm a very happy person. I used a lot of humor, jokes, and other stuff to keep me, in light spirits. And obviously it's obviously a technique to try and
I've been a funny kid.
Right. I've always had a sense of humor, and I really leaned on that to mask a lot of some of the other stuff that was going on, but there was a reason behind it. As any kid or any person who has pain in their life, usually you try and, drown it out with something opposite. So I did what I had to during that time. And obviously, looking back on it now, I don't think I would have changed it for the world. I don't even know if I would say, give that kid a coach. I think it was a journey that I had to go through because it formed the person who I am today. Right?
Do you think being your religious upbringing, do you believe there's like a higher power that's like a higher intelligence that just was moving through you? When you think of like self-preservation, it's more of it's almost like Star Trek, where like where we got hit by the enemy and the ship's like poorly functioning, so we're on like reserve power. But like that reserve power, that preservation is just really like priorities, focus, handle the basics, like handle these things, and there'll be another day tomorrow, and there'll be another day tomorrow, and somehow or another it actually kind of sharpened iron.
Yeah. So I am a Catholic person, and with that saying, I'm a Catholic in good standing. I practice my faith and I do all this other stuff. Now, for people who aren't, the general term is that there's this universal power that influences things that we do, and some people refer to it as the universe. I just refer to it as God. So just to kind of level set there for anybody who feels like this may not apply to them, I promise it does. I fully believe that we don't get to level up in life until we've learned the lesson where we currently are. And everything that I went through, in whether it's high school or college or thereafter, all the challenges that I faced, they're all amazing learning opportunities. There's something to be pulled out of there. And until I get that lesson, I will continue to face the challenge.
Just get spanked harder and harder until you get it.
Exactly. It's something where you will run into the brick wall, and if you don't learn that you're supposed to go around it, you will run into a even harder brick wall at a faster speed, and it will hurt more. Why? Because you haven't learned yet. And some people learn something, very quickly. They have that self-awareness to be able to say, this is what I'm supposed to take away from this, and this is how I level up. And then there are people who do the same thing, and to the point where they start driving themselves mad because they have yet to understand what is supposed to be learned from the exercise.
I feel like often people, there's kind of it's the best phrase, this is like, life is like sends you subtle whispers and nudges.
Yes.
And if you don't listen to those subtle nudges, well, then, the wrecking ball is going to come in there and smash everything to smithereens to get your attention. So like, if you're not speaking your truth in your voice, if you're not listening to those whispers to speak truth, real truth, you'll like you said, you'll get the knock on the door. You'll get the baseball bat next to the kneecaps. You'll get the car to run over you. And eventually you're going to get cancer. You're going to get throat cancer. It's going to be like, you should have been speaking.
Yeah. And at the end of it,
at
the end of it, at some point you will understand, and you will say, at least for me, I would say, like, God had to make this loud enough for me to pay attention. Right. So like at first he's, something's going to be thrown in front of you, and it's going to be, hey, you have all the tools within you. You're born with all this potential. And it's only as we grow older that we start putting restraints on some of these things. Sometimes God puts challenges in our lives so that we can understand how to remove restraints at will, to be able to use certain parts of our potential for the betterment of ourselves and the people around us. And then there are some challenges that are put in front of us that tell us, hey, you need to learn how to put restraints on something in order for you to, once again, achieve the betterment of yourself and others around you. Because that's our goal. Our goal as human beings is to bring value to ourselves and to the people around us. And the only way we bring value to ourselves is the consistent pursuit of betterment in our lives.
That daily self-mastery practice.
Exactly.
For me, it's a resonating theme with the folks that I speak with on a regular basis. It's like, it's really going back to the inner reflection, the observer, the self practices, and then how you flow out into the world, your impact. What kind of impact? Like, are you good, so good that you can bring that goodness to the rest of the world?
Yeah, 100%. And so obviously, well, those tools and other things, like, that's obviously the goal, is to figure out how you do that. And or, the process of how you tap into that stuff into yourself. And then the vehicle that you choose to do some of those things obviously can differ. Some people are coaches, some people are business executives, some people are this, some people are that. It doesn't matter. It just comes down to understanding how you tap into yourself to reveal value for something else. But anyway, so
Hold on.
yeah, go ahead.
I want to bring up a number of years back,
Uh-huh.
when you were going through some stuff with your first child. You got, I know we're here to talk about business and coaching and life, but life like came at you in a way like, I didn't see this coming, and how am I supposed to work with this, and how could this possibly be a lesson to me?
Yeah.
I think it's a really good share that, we've been in some deep conversations in the past about things. And I think this would be if you're open to going there, I think this would be a really great place to.
Yeah. I'm very, very open to going there. And I've actually, and before I dive into it, probably the biggest lesson that I've learned is, two things, and really two levels of the same thing. Is one, learning how to be actually transparent with people. And transparency just means you lay all the facts out there, right? You don't intentionally hide anything. And then vulnerable is sharing things that are difficult to share, sharing those moments where you had to look in the mirror, where you feel exposed, right? When you say, I did this and I effed up, I did whatever, right? And it makes you feel bad. You feel the sense of remorse.
Mention exposure. It's like, you're just, here it is.
Yeah. And you get to vulnerability by practicing transparency. And so in light of that, I've literally written about this, which I'm going to be, you're going to be getting the Forever Athlete book, which I have literally your copy right here. That's going to be getting out to you. I finally have these mailers that came in after delays that I can.
Forever Athlete. Remember that name, Forever Athlete.
At the very end, I'll bring it back up. But
okay, we'll bring it back.
I wrote about this story in there. So the story from a high level perspective, and if anybody wants to learn more, obviously, or read more about it, then I'll give you the opportunity to do so when I repeat the book and all that other stuff at the end. But with my first son, about 5 months prior to his birth, my wife was roughly 5 months pregnant, and it was September 1st. I was actually at Mass, and, my birthday is September 2nd. And I was just like, I was praying, I took a moment and I just self-reflection. I was just like, this last year I've been unhappy. This last year I felt like I've been running this rat race. I've been in this hamster wheel. I feel like things need to change. And I asked for change. I put it out there. I said, whatever happens, I'm going to recognize it as change that's needed.
Oh shit. It's like, careful what you ask for.
Yeah.
Right?
And I very quickly learned the value that your words hold, especially when you put things out there, because you're practicing mental priming. You're putting something out there that your brain is now fixated on trying to find a win with, where it says, hey, this has changed, this has changed, this has changed, this maybe isn't changed, but we're going to consider it change anyways. Because
it's crazy how that math works too, with God and the universe.
100%.
Like when you just even vocalizing that level of commitment and curiosity, the manifesting power, it's like the winds of change begin, and there's no way to stop it. It's coming.
Yeah. Simplest. And sometimes it's always been there. You just need to give yourself an excuse to recognize it, such as if, I'm sitting there and telling somebody like all these different things about like the color blue. Like, did you know the history of the color blue and all these blah, blah, blah. And I say blue, blue, blue. And then I ask someone to look around the room and see what color stands out to them. They're going to automatically be like, they're going to find stuff that's blue because their brain is mentally primed. And it's not that the color suddenly appeared, it's that they notice them more frequently because they've given themselves permission to seek it out and find it as a win. So I did that for myself. I prayed to put it out there for change. Very next day, I find out that a couple of teams within the company I was working at were getting dissolved because the company was struggling. My team was one of them. And so my wife, once again, 5 months pregnant, And I'm the breadwinner and I lose my job. And, that was our insurance, and all this other stuff. So during that time, now my wife being an absolute all-star, she was a nanny at the time. So she was pregnant while also watching other people's kids. Um, and she said, I'm going to buckle down and I'm going to take on more hours. And we were very fortunate that we were, our monthly expenses were roughly $3,000 a month, with utilities, with our mortgage payment, with all these different things. We strung it down to be $3,000 a month, with 1,900 of that being our mortgage. We were on a ramen, like I kid you not, like we would go and we would buy ramen on a weekly basis. So that's what we ate.
And thank God for you. You had not just a champ as a wife, but you actually had a professional cheerleader.
Yes. Yeah. She's nothing short of absolutely incredible. And so, and she was super supportive. And I spent 5 months, going through a whole bunch of stuff, but from a high level, I spent about 100 hours interviewing over the course of 5 months, to try and find something to put stability back in our lives. And it never came. Our son was born and we had no money in the bank. Neither of us had any income because my wife wasn't going to go work. We just had a brand new child. And I had no idea what was going to happen, but it was one of those things where it was like this ultimate moment of surrender, where it was like, I have no clue what's going to happen, but I had learned also the power of the journey and discipline along the way, because what I didn't cover, I said 100 hours of interviewing. I had forced myself to burn off about 90% of everything that I had ever known about business. It was a painful experience, looking in the mirror and saying, the marketplace right now does not like me. I have to become better. I have to become greater, because where I'm currently at is not what others want. And it's not their problem. It's me. If I want to put a pillar of stability in my life and work with somebody, then and have that there so I can continue my coaching practice on the side, because my coaching practice was not in a place where I was making, tons of money. It was in a place where I was making some money, but my wife and I, we didn't touch that because obviously I reinvested it into me becoming a better coach and all these things. We did tap into it a little bit, to be able to get by, but I had to look at myself in the mirror a lot, and I had to break down the person who I was in order to allow the person who was meant to be to come through. And it wasn't until I actually started going into a couple of interviews, and these were some of the final ones that I had, I went in and I, rather than trying to answer things and go about it like how we're taught to, hey, you go in there, you answer all these things, you're going to get questions like this, you should answer it like this. I went the total opposite way. I went in and I was just, I asked them coaching questions because I had officially gotten my coaching certification, the year prior, to all of this happening. So I was still hyper early in my coaching process. I was a spring chicken, and I just went full coach, right? And I was just like, be you. Like, if they don't like you for you've sat with 30 other companies already, and you know that they didn't like who you were. So be who you haven't been. And so I went all out and I started grilling companies, and people are interviewing me. I ripped back these layers in the interviews, and they suddenly started to take a different turn. And obviously the conclusion of this is that 2 days after my son was born, I got a call, not only to have another client work with me for more than I had ever asked for, but then ever asked for anybody else in the past. And they said yes. But then I had a company call me and offer me a job that was twice as much than I'd ever made in my life. And it was because I had put in the disciplines and made it so that those things became a natural occurrence. And it was just a matter of time rather than it being some like shot in the dark. but I had never done anything like that before, where I had truly understood what discipline can look like, especially when you're having to peel away something that you were in order to allow the person that you want to be to come out and be and flourish.
You make it sound really, smooth. It's a
Oh,
messy,
it sucked.
scary,
It was terrible.
terrible place to be in, that you're like, oh man, I'm not competitive anymore as this.
Yeah, you think of the bottom of a barrel, especially as a man, when when you can't be a breadwinner, you don't feel like you're able to be competitive. You feel like you're getting beat around every corner. You feel like you're being unaccepted. You feel like your value is not being appreciated.
Pretty emasculating.
You've stripped away everything that a man normally wants to go after, right? At that point, I was like, I'm going to start fighting people just so I can feel like a man again and feel like I'm combating something here. But so it was not fun. But it was meant to happen. That whole entire process. God put that challenge in my life so that he could say, if you're going to be the person who you're meant to be, then we need to strip away the person who helped you get to where you are now. Because that's just part of the process for everybody.
Such a stripping away process. I mean, I've experienced that with myself. It's a stripping away process of, and it's messy. It's, for me, it was humiliating and humbling, but a stripping away process of like anything that's not you, that doesn't need to go forward in life. That's not part of the formula of who you must become or remember yourself to be. It's like only clean and pure goes forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's comes down to what got you here is not going to get you there. And if you feel like you're struggling to get there, then realize there's probably some stuff that got you to where you're at that's got to head out the exit door in order for new things to come in. Like you have to force yourself to grow and change. And that's what life is about, is the pursuit of continuously being better. Because once you feel like you've quote unquote made it, things get really flippin' boring.
And life doesn't let you feel like you made it, only for a short little blip, and then you get spanked again with the next lesson.
Yes, absolutely. You get a seat at the table for like a moment, for an hors d'oeuvre. And they're like, if you want to come back for the main course, like get out there and go do some more work, right? You only get a moment where you get to feel good. I mean, it's like a championship, right? You win a championship, like let's say you win the Super Bowl. You get a couple days, and then guess what? It's the off season. Everything resets. No one gives a crap. Trades are happening. People are positioning themselves because nothing is guaranteed, and everybody wants to win and everybody wants success. And if you want to find success, then you have to be willing to play by the rules of the game of the arena that you're trying to find success in. And more often than not, it means you have a moment of feeling, okay, I'm on top of the world. And then you get your ass thrown back down to the, base camp. And they say,
how do you take these skills, Keegan, when here you are, okay, this is happening in my career now. Okay, getting a handle on these things. How do you take it when like maybe the health of your baby or one of those concerns comes up? How do you take this, here I go again in this different aspect of my life, and I'm warring up as a fierce warrior in my career path and providing for my family, providing safety and security and my happiness and joy shared with them, and then the terror of like, what if harm can come to my child, and I don't have control over this, and now I've got to like, where am I sourced now?
Yeah. Every new parent learns this at some point. There's this moment of surrender that you go under with a new kid, where you realize you don't call the shots, they do. And you do what they are basically needing, right? You cater to their needs, and you learn how to almost stand out of the way. I've learned more about, my coaching practice and human beings through my kids than I have almost anything else. So when it comes to parenting, number one thing that I have learned when it comes to being a parent is you can only ask questions. You can't provide every answer. You can provide some guidance if somebody has no clue what something is, right? Like you can provide guidelines and you can say, hey, if you're going to go into this, be aware of X, Y, and Z, but you cannot, like if somebody is doing something dangerous very cautiously, you shouldn't be interfering with it. Because if your child is being cautious, period, it means they're being thoughtful about their intent and they're being thoughtful about their procedure. And as a parent, people usually step in the way and try and control those situations. When you realize that self-discovery for kids is so important, kids pick up on stuff, and all you can do is control as a parent how much you go all out and play with your kids and be there with them and give them your entire heart, and how you do the exact same thing with your spouse. And I would argue that going all out and giving your entire heart to your spouse first before you give them to your kids is actually more important, because your children will learn how to love, and they will learn relationships, and they will learn communication from their mother and father first, or their parents first. Right? They don't learn it from.
They need to witness you not arguing in the back room, but actually communicating, articulating your different disagreements.
Yeah, I guarantee this: if you hug your spouse enough in front of your kids, they will want to hug too. Right? They want to replicate action because they can feel the emotion that comes from it. They're kinetic learners. Like, so don't sit there and try and ignore stuff. Show them, let them see your heart, let them see your intention. Don't try and tell them how they're supposed to do it. Show them how they're supposed to do it. That's probably one of the most important things that I've learned as a parent, that I cannot stress enough, especially, and it's helped me grow as an individual.
Yeah, Keegan, I come from that generation of kids that, like, it was just like, don't touch this, don't do that, don't do that. And now the museums now have like all this stuff for kids to touch. It's like, do this, you can do this, you can do this, that you engage this way. But I was generation of like, don't touch that and break something that's gonna be expensive to me.
Yeah, if you do this, like, you're gonna kill somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, so
that doesn't go away. I mean, it's still there in some way, shape, or form, and it's for, once again, it's a parent being like, let me try and introduce the shock of something. You like, if a kid wants to try and flop down a flight of stairs, a parent is going to intervene, because they want to try and show them some form of, hey, there is something dangerous here, without them having to go through the experience of learning that it is dangerous. And how well does that work, right?
What do you see now as a young parent? Is that disappearing from our culture? The hugs, the being shown. Is there a dysfunction in our society that, like, as a kid, like, I was just like, show me what I can do, what it could look like, what's possible. But what was modeled for me was like, I don't want this. This is not for me. This doesn't look like a method that works.
Yeah, I think let's look at the facts. There are more specialized, whether it comes to sports training, whether it comes to types of schools that are out there, types of daycares, other stuff. There are more specialized avenues at an earlier age than ever before. And this is simply because parents are also have more on their plate than ever before, because it's not that there's just one breadwinner. Like, with the way the economy is today, most parents have to be dual income earners in some way, shape, or form. And some people by choice, other people not by choice. It just depends on what your scenario looks like. But with that, obviously, there's a sacrifice that has to be made. And I think the number one thing that kind of happens is, how can we make sure that, is the kid okay? Okay, cool. I've got stuff I have to do. And it's a responsibility thing. And this is something that historically men have had to carry the burden of being historical breadwinners, is that they don't get a lot of those moments with family. They don't get a lot of that FaceTime with family. But now things are starting to actually even out, and there's actually it's very important in terms of emotional intelligence and love and caring and all these other things for kids to have access to their mothers, and they're slowly not having as much access to them, because mom may have to go be an earner right? It's a tough pay marketplace right now in terms of cost of living versus how much you get paid. And in terms of fathers, it's the same thing, if anything, maybe slightly less, because every once in a while you get a stay-at-home dad, or you get someone who, because you're a dual income family, the father doesn't have to work as much, or maybe because of remote work, right? But it still comes down to the same thing of um, kids in general are not having quite as much access to their parents, and it's not by the parents' fault, but it's by the parents' responsibilities that they have to take on, that they have to embrace, and it's unfortunately putting um, strain on an individual's ability to get the exposure to family, to love, to seeing their parents interact with each other. And it can be tough. It can be really stressful on a kid, because it may not set them up appropriately for when they hit like age 4, when they start actually socializing with other individuals. Because those first 4 years, they learn so much, and their number one source of learning everything comes from their parents. And when that gets limited, um, it can be tough. It's not something that like damages them for life per se, but it makes things more difficult in some ways and easier in some other ways.
Yeah, I think from what I've observed, and I'm sure you probably would agree with this, that even if the parents are at home, everybody's just caught up with the list.
Yeah, there's
Uh,
technology everywhere that's
and
vying for
so
your attention.
there's an interaction, but is it really that great? I mean, are they, I even caught myself, just walking my dog and spending too much time on my phone and not just enjoying the present moment. My dog's like, hey, be here now. Let's go slobber and
Yeah.
sniff and do this.
All they want is a moment of affection, right? But even
Connection.
that seems like, well, what if, in your
I could be doing this. I could also get
could
that
be
taken
doing
care of right now. Get that
a
done.
million things. And that's because that's how society is set up, that at any given moment, a big decision could be made. Whereas, historically, there are certain hours in the day where big decisions can happen. But now it's 24/7 that these things can happen, just because of the way that, foundationally technology is all set up, which that presence in the moment, I mean, that you mentioned, is massive. And that's the number one thing that I think my kids have really taught me, is when you're with them and they they give you 100% of their attention for a split second, it hits you so deep. And when you can give that back to them and they recognize it for just a split moment, man, it changes everything. It changes, it allows you to hit reset for a split second to understand your priorities, why you do what you do. It rekindles that fire within. And the fact that that can happen from, um, you could spend a week trying to be present in the moment, and there will be a 5-minute period throughout that week where you really get that reset. And the discipline of being present in the moment gives you access to those 5 minutes on a weekly basis. And you don't know when they're going to happen, but you have to remain disciplined in order to have access to it. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people forget. They think, well, I'm going to be present in the moment for a split second, and that's going to cure everything. No, it's not. It's going to be that you're going to be present in the moment. You're going to feel bored. And then by the 5th time you practice being present in the moment, you'll get a little something out of it.
Hmm.
But when you can create a discipline around that in terms of your lifestyle, it's a beautiful thing. And that goes with anything. Like, you don't go to the gym once and come home and suddenly see all these changes. You get results from the implementation of the discipline of going to the gym. It's not about the single intensity of one workout. It's not about the type of workout. It's about the consistency of the practice that gives you the results. That's the same thing that goes with everything in our lives.
Well, if people wanted to get a hold of you and get a hold of your book,
Yeah.
first one, just kind of preface this of, I know Keegan, I know you as a soulful being who's really guided by, a light, a calling that's about helping people find glue together more of those moments of presence. And you definitely have been someone that I've witnessed help people get connected to themselves and to their visions of what they want to do performance wise, and in their sports, because you work with a lot of athletes, and as well as and not just in one's family life. It all comes back to like, why are you doing all of what you're doing here? It's not just about the performance outcome. It's about the quality of the life you're living and the impact you're sharing with the people that mean the most to you. But you also I think that's anybody you come across. You're very similar to me in the sense that, like, it's, hey, who are you in front of right now? I'm just here to serve and help and act as a resource, a guide. I'm not here to advise you on and interrupt your own cautious data processing for yourself to make smart decisions. You're here to help someone continue on that, unique path that they're on. But I guess, speak a little bit to your book that you've just recently published, and maybe share a little bit, with our audience, how they might get a hold of that, how they might get a hold of you, and where your kind of specialty is. I know we've got some different specialties ourselves, but we both come from a place of who's in front of me and how can I serve them at the highest possible level.
Yeah. So I really appreciate that. And so for anybody who is wanting to continue any of this conversation or learn more about any of the stuff that I do, you can always head over to lamarcoaching.com, LAMAR coaching.com. And on there is also listed the book Forever Athlete.
Yeah, there it is.
I'm holding up a copy of it right now. And Forever Athlete is actually a compilation of different stories, tools, tactics of people who have played at large universities or in the professional level of sports, and what they've taken from that realm into the world thereafter that has served them. And so I share not only one of the stories that you heard today about those 5 months that were grueling for me, but I also share obviously that in more detail. I share a little bit about my practice, some of the things that I focus on. And the number one thing that I love to work on with people is understanding how they can do more with what they currently have by eliminating distractions that get in the way. So identifying those things, removing them, and allowing you to just flourish with what you already have. You'd be amazed at how much more you can accomplish by just removing all the junk that is holding you in place on a daily basis. So once again, you can head over to lamarcoaching.com to pick up this book. If you are in the Colorado area, you can always reach out to me directly on the website via contact or something like that, and just tell me I can bring the book to you for $20, or it's $25 online. If I deliver it to you in person, I'll buy you a coffee too. But if you buy it online, it's $25 book. It's an amazing book. And it's not just me you're having access to, it's 18 authors that put this together. And it's an absolutely amazing piece of work here. We recently went number one in 6 different categories for bestseller, which has been a nice pat on the back to be able to say that clearly there's some value here. And I think a lot of people are going to get some value, not out of just particularly me, but there's a lot of other people, and you'll find value somewhere in there. I promise you. And if you want to get in touch with me directly, you can just reach out to me at Keegan, Keegan at lamarcoaching.com. That's my personal email. I love when people reach out to me with questions or anything like that, and I'd be more than happy to have a conversation. But Glenn, this has been amazing. I can't tell you how much I appreciate being on this side, and I can't let you go without saying, if you haven't, or if you're curious to see Glenn on the other side of the mic where I grill him and he shares stories, then you can go over to the Unstoppable Mindset podcast, which is on any podcast platform. And I believe Glenn was episode 101. And so
this is why after our time together, I decided, you know what, I'm going to do 100 podcasts in 100 days. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. That's the most Glenn thing I've ever heard. Hey, we did a podcast together. How you have just over 100 episodes? All right, I'm going to do 100 episodes in 100 days. And I'm like, that's Glenn. Just go all out for, and do these amazing sprints and just gain a ton of experience. And then decide what you want to do after it. Right. And see if it's something you want to continue or if it's something that was amazing to do, but either way you immerse yourself. And it's one of the things that I admire about you the most is your ability for pure immersion, into something that you know is a little bit of a gray area for you, and you're like, I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I'm going to commit to something fully and immerse myself in it and get as much out of it as possible.
See what comes out of that. You know,
Yeah.
I'm scheduled to go climb Devil's Tower at the Close Encounters Rock next month, and my climbing coach, my guide, when I climb the 3 flat irons, I called him up again. I'm like, you ready for another adventure?
He's like, you almost died last time.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm going to get my GoPro. Everyone's going to watch me piss my pants when I'm like doing this jump across this abyss, 500 feet up. Yeah. And he's like, all he said to me was, wear your brown pants.
Wear your brown pants.
Yeah. So we'll see. Hopefully we'll see what shows up on video here for everybody.
Oh, I love it. Well, I appreciate the conversation as always, man. And I'm so excited to see what comes out of these 100 days for you. And I can't wait to continue the conversation another time.
Yeah, we'll be having another podcast or another conversation here again shortly. But just want to say thank you everybody for listening in, and hopefully you got some great value. I'm always taking lots of notes. Today, I actually just kind of paused and just was present and just hanging here with you today. So normally I'm just hammering away my notes during these, but just taking a lot in and very heartfelt. And I know Keegan always brings seems like a calm simplicity to things, but I know having known you for so many years, there's just so much that goes into these like lessons to be learned. And but you have a unique way of bringing that what's possible for others so that they can maybe get past their anxiety, around the changes they need to make and step into, and they can step into their, they can leave behind what's maybe working to step into what really wants to happen. Yeah. And step up and become that which they were gifted with. So
100%. No, I really do appreciate you saying all that stuff. And like I said earlier, just to reiterate, because I definitely don't say it lightly. I admire your ability to really dive into the deep end with a lot of stuff for the sake of getting amazing experience and having that level you up as a human being. And it shows with the clients that you work with. You help them immerse themselves and go further than what they thought they could. So I appreciate it. And I love tracking your journey. And obviously I love tracking your clients' journeys along the way too.
Good stuff. Yeah, good stuff, brother. Well, I'll see you shortly, and I'll see everybody else shortly. Thank you very much. Just have a wonderful day, wonderful week. See you soon.